What do Socrates, propaganda experts, feminist theorists, and AI critics have in common? They all shaped how we understand messages, media, and meaning. From Socratic dialogues to Zuboff's surveillance capitalism, communication theory stretches from ancient rhetoric to digital algorithms. But this isn't just a timeline of ideas, it's a story about how we see the world and how the world sees us. Let's explore this timeline together. We begin in ancient Greece, where thinkers like Protagoras, Socrates, and the sophists debated the nature of truth and persuasion. Plato emphasized ideal forms and ethical reasoning, while Aristotle grounded rhetoric in logic and practical persuasion. These classical foundations defined communication as a moral, philosophical, and civic practice, shaping centuries of thought. By the early 20th century, communication was shaped by democracy, propaganda, and mass influence. Thinkers like John Dewey saw communication as the heart of democratic life. Meanwhile, Edward Bernays explored how media could engineer public consent through persuasive campaigns. Researchers like Paul Lazarsfeld and Herta Herzog began asking how media actually impacted audiences, shifting attention to what people do with the media, not just what it does to them. After World War II, communication research turned towards the power and effects of mass media. Harold Lasswell proposed a linear model of communication, asking who says what to whom, through what channel, and with what effect. Shannon and Weaver offered a technical model of transmission, treating communication like signal flow. Researchers like Hovland, Janis, and Kelly focused on persuasion, attitude change, and propaganda. At the same time, thinkers like Freire and Gramsci introduced communication as a tool of both domination and liberation, highlighting power, ideology, and critical pedagogy. As television expanded, Paul Lazarsfeld proposed the two-step flow of influence, and George Gerbner warned of cultivation effects over time. Theories like symbolic convergence by Ernest Borman and social penetration theory by Altman and Taylor added insight into how meaning and relationships form through communication. Scholars like McCombs, Goffman, Blumler, and Katz shifted the lens toward audience agency through agenda setting, framing, and the uses and gratification. This era laid the empirical and the theoretical foundations of communication, linking message effects, audience behavior, and deeper questions of power and meaning. In the 1970s and 80s, the focus of communication theory shifted from effects to power, culture, and ideology. Scholars like Herbert Schiller and Dallas Smythe examined how global media and advertising served corporate and imperial interests, turning audiences into commodities. Stuart Hall revolutionized media studies with his encoding decoding model, showing how meanings are made and contested by the audience. Feminist theorists like Laura Mulvey, Bell Hooks, and Julia Wood analyzed how gender and race shape who gets seen, heard, and believed in the media. Walter Fisherman's narrative paradigm reframed communication as storytelling. Meanwhile, James Carey and Daniel Harlan highlighted the media's ritual and political role in society. Critical thinkers like Nancy Fraser and Langelier and Peterson focused on voice, identity, and subaltern counterpublics, bringing everyday performances and marginalized perspectives into scholarly view. Theorists like Jean Baudrillard and Gilles Deleuze pushed communication into postmodern terrains, where meaning isn't stable and reality is often stimulated. In this era, communication became more than message delivery. It became a site of resistance, cultural performance, and identity politics. In the late 1990s, communication theory embraced fluidity, contradiction, and global complexity. Relational dialectics theory by Baxter and Montgomery revealed how human relationships are shaped by ongoing tensions and opposites. Manuel Castells introduced the concept of the network society, where power flows through digital, global, and decentralized networks. Zygmunt Bauman called our era liquid modernity, where identities and relationships are constantly in flux. Armand Metellard and Chike Ogebo critiqued how global media shapes development and representation, calling for context-grounded post-colonial perspectives. Bruno Latour emphasized the assemblage of humans, technologies, and systems, breaking down boundaries between social and technical actors in what he called actor networks. These complex relations shaped how knowledge, power, and the meaning circulate in a highly mediated world. In this postmodern moment, communication was no longer linear. It became networked, contradictory, and radically unstable. Today, communication is shaped by platforms, algorithms, and data capitalism. Shoshana Zuboff reveals how big tech monetizes behaviors in what she calls surveillance capitalism. John Cheney-Leopold shows how algorithms construct identity, sorting us into categories we never chose. Lisa Nakamura and Zizi Papakarisi explore how race, gender, and emotion are encoded in digital spaces, shaping how we see and are seen. Sarah Bennett Weiser and Rosalind Gill critique how feminism and femininity are rebranded through platforms, made visible but often depoliticized. At the same time, scholars like Carlton Gillespie and Robert Gorvey uncover the hidden labor and informal governance behind content moderation and platform rules. Claire Wardle and Philip Howard warn us about the rise of misinformation, bots, and digital propaganda, what Wardle calls information disorder. Nicholas Colry calls his system data colonialism, arguing that today's platforms extract not just resources but lived experiences. And thinkers like Herman Weizerman remind us that global media theory must be decolonized, rooted in local struggles, not Western assumptions. In this era, platforms don't just host communication, they curate, classify, commodify, and control it. But these theories are not just historical. Each one reflects deeper assumptions about reality, knowledge, and purpose. Let's explore the philosophical domains behind them. In the foundational empirical domain, communication is approached as a science. Theorists believe in objective reality, measurable behavior, and causal patterns. From Harold Lasswell's linear model to Shannon and Weaver's transmission model, communication is something that can be mapped and measured. Scholars like Edward Bernays, Paul Lazarsfeld, George Gerbner, Blumler, and Katz laid the groundwork for persuasion, effects, and the audience behavior. Even today, theories like agenda setting, users and gratification, and cultivation theory continue to inform political campaigns, public health messaging, and media psychology. In the foundational analytical domain, communication is examined through structural logic and systems of power. Thinkers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and later Gramsci, Schiller, and Moscow believe media and language reflect deeper political and economic realities. These theories uncover how ideology, hegemony, and commodification shape what we call truth, from audience commodity to the political economy of communication. This domain shows how media is never neutral. It serves those in power. The reflexive empirical domain values situated knowledge and context. It explores how people experience, perform, and negotiate communication in their lives. Scholars like Tinchtumi, Langelier, and Altman and Taylor emphasize relationships, identity, and cultural context. Theories like face negotiation, relational dialects, and social penetration theory don't just describe communication, they humanize it. And work like James Carey's ritual model reminds us that communication is also about meaning making, not just message delivery. And last, the reflexive analytical domain questions the very foundation of knowledge, meaning and identity. Thinkers like Stuart Hall, Bell Hooks, Jean Baudrillard, Rosalind Gill, and Shoshana Zuboff explore how communication is shaped by culture, gender, race, and algorithmic systems, from encoding decoding to the oppositional gaze, post feminist sensibility, and surveillance capitalism. These scholars highlight how communication constructs and resists systems of control. This domain is not about finding fixed truths, but exposing hidden assumptions, asking whose voice is missing and how power circulates through signs, stories, and data. My own research on closed Facebook groups in Pakistan, explored through the lens of third place and subaltern counterpublics, belongs here too. It investigates how marginalized voices negotiate visibility, respectability, and resistance in digital spaces. Like others in this domain, it sees communication not just as an expression, but as a political act of reclaiming voice. So each quadrant offers a unique view, from objective patterns to lived resistance. Together, they remind us communication theory doesn't just describe the world, it helps us question it and reimagine what it could be.